I really like going with a tilt steering column. I put them in almost everything I build. Reason being, nice and comfortable. I can go ahead and adjust this to wherever I want when I get in and out. I don't have to bang my knees into the steering wheel and things. Another reason I like it is that in a lot of the earlier trucks, the steering shaft that went through the steering column, it was bolted right to the gearbox that's bolted right to the frame. So if you get into an accident, all of that's coming straight at your chest. That whole shaft is going to want to punch you straight in the face. So, for comfortability and safety, tilt columns are the way to go. I'm going to go ahead and install one here into Eric's 62 Chevy pickup, and I'm going to give you a lot of different options because there's different ways of connecting it down on the bottom. There's different ways of doing your electrical. So I'm going to try to hit every single base on my way. You stay tuned, you hear? So we'll start off down here at the gearbox. Now you might notice this gearbox does not look original. That's because I already put power steering on this when I went ahead and rebuilt the truck about 10 years ago. If you're doing your steering column, you might want to go ahead and do power steering at the same time, knock out two birds with one stone. Yes, we've got a kit for that. So all we need to do is just take this one little bolt out right here. Typically it's going to be a 12-point bolt that's in there, and you need to take it all the way out because the shaft that's coming out of the power steering pump right here, or your gearbox, it'll be the same. It has an indentation right there where this bolt goes through. So if you don't take this off, it's not going to come off. When I'll get you a better look at that in a little bit later. Now up here we've got this little inner fender cup right here, and that'll need to come off. So a lot of times this will have a 3/8 or maybe a 7/16 in there. Over the years, a lot of times people will put in different things. So I almost don't want to say what it normally comes with because so many times they've been swapped over. But I'm going to go ahead and get all this stuff disconnected, and then I'll show you what happens underneath the dash. So just give me a minute or two and I'll be right back, okay? All right, so before I get into the cab, actually, I got to do a little bit of work underneath the hood here. You're going to have your gear selector that you're going to have to disconnect, whether you got an automatic or the 3-speed, and then there's another clamp right up here at the top, and we're going to want to take that off too. So I'll get those guys going. All right, so this is the ring or the clamp that's holding onto the steering column just past the firewall. You're going to want to take that all the way off. When you do, put the bolt back in so you can find it. And then what we're going to do is climb up underneath the dash right here. Nothing really all that big of a deal. You just got a bunch of 1/2-inch bolts you're going to be taking out. First, this emergency brake cable bracket will come off. Then there's another bracket that's holding the steering column up there. That'll come off. You'll have some electric wires and things like that you're going to want to take off gingerly. If they're original, they can be really stiff and brittle, and when you start working with them, they can break, so watch out for that. So let me get this guy out of here a little bit, and then I'll show you how the rest of the column comes out because it's a little bit of a trick for that. All right, I got most of my bolts out of the brackets here, and my steering column's just about ready to come down, but I'm going to want to take all the little screws that are holding on this plate and this gasket here before I drop that down, because once the steering column pops down, it's a little bit difficult to get to these. So now the trick on this, getting this out, is that you have your gear selector up there, whether you're a 3-speed or an automatic, and what you have to do is you just make sure that that is turned down or up. Sometimes it'll work one way, it won't work the other way, so that you can get it through the hole, because if they're turned 90 degrees, you're not going to get it through that hole down there. Now, again, I put power steering on this, and this shaft is shorter, so this is going to be easier for me. If you have a original shaft and it's really long and attached to the gearbox down there, you're going to need to take off your steering wheel in order to be able to pull it up far enough. I've even had to take out the rear glass sometimes just because I couldn't get it to out one way or the other. So again, this is going to be easier for me because I've converted this. If you got the original, take your steering wheel out, and then that long old shaft will come out too. So I got all of my gear selectors lined up in the right row. So typically your selector shaft right here, that'll be down or up, and then you can go ahead and slip it through the hole there. So a bit like that. Now make sure you're watching out for your wires that are down there. Also make sure that you're watching out for any ground wires that are down there. A lot of times they're going to be attached to miscellaneous brackets from weird electrical jobs done over the years. Now I got this all up. I'm going to prep up my column and we'll get sticking it in there. All right, now I should have probably mentioned this before we got started, but you're going to need to do a lot of planning most of the time in order to replace your steering columns. Now we do have some steering columns that are direct bolt in and you don't really have that much thinking. But on this is universal style, you're going to have a lot more options. First of all, you're going to want to measure how long of a steering column do you want. We've got 30 inches and we've got 33 inches. This one right here is a 30 inch because that's what works good in the measurements there. Your 60 to 66, that's going to be pretty much looking about like this because it's a straight shot, if you will, from your steering column all the way down to the gearbox. But on your 47s and your 50s, those don't line up straight and you might have different kind of gearboxes on there and things. So you have to think about how long of a double D shaft do I need? Am I going to need any U-joints? If I do, you're normally going to need two because you'll have a pivot at the top and you'll have a pivot at the gearbox. You're going to want to replace your rag joint. Okay, and this is kind of an intermediary shaft right here. This just simply slips in like that, and this will slide in and out. So if you get into an accident, it'll just slide down. So you're going to want to make sure how long I'm going to be cutting this piece, for instance, because if it was all the way at the shaft right here and bottomed out on my rag joint, then it's not going to slip in. But if I have it out too far, then I'm not going to be able to get enough of a grip, and it might fall out in the future. So you're really going to need to do a lot of planning and decide exactly what steering column you want to get, what peripherals you might need to get at the same time, and then you're going to be able to get everything at once and knock it out all in one day. So I'm going to go ahead and prep up some stuff. This right here, for instance, this is a coupler, and that is going to go on the end right here, and then the double D shaft will go right on that. So I've got pretty much a simple setup on this one, but like I said, you're going to want to plan it out before you get into it. Now all I've done is just tape up this end here. I don't want it to get all scratched up, and then I probably ought to get a new piece of rubber for my firewall too. So let me get that stuff and then we'll start sliding this in and see how I'm going to work the rest of this out, because I got to be honest, I'm not exactly sure just how I'm going to do it just yet. So now before you put your steering column back in, make sure any gaskets or anything goes on first. It's really kind of a drag to have to do that after the fact. So I'm all set up. I'm going to go ahead and slide it in there. And I got to get this basically in here. I'm not going to tighten everything totally down. I'm just getting it snugged up in there. Then when it's in, I'll take a look past the firewall and I'll see how I'm going to set up everything else out, measure my double D shafts and all that kind of stuff. So let me get this in. So what we've done is we've taken the steering column, we put it in there, and we just got it kind of loose up in there. I got the ring or the clamp that goes on the outside of the firewall on there, and then I'm able to position the steering column and try a couple of different places, see where I like everything. Once I've got it where I like it, then I can go ahead and tighten it up a little bit more. You might need to do some more adjustments, but I think we're good to go right now, and I can figure out what I'm going to be doing down here. Now I want to point out a few things on the rag joint. You'll find some different ones, but they'll generally have one side, they're splined first of all, and then you'll have generally one side that's kind of flat, and you'll also have, if you look here on the gearbox, how it's got this little notch in it right here, and that notch and the flat spot on here have to line all up, because when you put this bolt in, it's going to fit right into where that notch is. So we got to line all that up and get this in, then we can figure out the rest. So we got our flat spot right there, line that up, and then I can just gently tap it down. Okay, then line that up, so we're good to go. Now the bolt right here, you're going to notice that there are no threads right here. That's because that's where it's riding right in that groove. So when you install this nut, this bolt here, make sure that you are not installing one that has threads all the way down. You need that shank right there because we don't want that to dig into the shaft right there. So after I get this guy bolted in and in the right spot, I can figure out my distance in the middle right here. This right here is the double D shaft that came with this kit. If I go ahead and I slide it right into this coupler right here, I'm going to loosen up these bolts. I'm going to make sure they're not sticking down. Then I can shove that all the way in there. And I might mark that just to be on the safe side. So here we can see how far this is going down. And you can see that we'd have probably about 3, maybe 4 inches before this shaft would collapse and send the impact up. So I think we're good and safe there. So what I'm going to do is take this back out. I'll be able to put this shaft in. Actually, I might be able to just do it right now. Let's see. All right, that's a little tough. So I'll take this back off. I'll put the shaft back in. Then all I got to do is move it up and bolt that down. And we're good to go down here after we tighten everybody up. So give me 2 and 2. I'll be right back. So I want you to notice these 2 bolts right here that have the locking nuts on them. When we put our shaft in, that's what's going to hold the shaft in. To give it a little bit extra support, I guess you will, what I like to do is go ahead and bolt it in so that it makes a mark on the shaft. Then I'll take the shaft back out. I'll drill some just little holes in there, and then when I put this back on, I'll be able to actually bolt the bolts into the double D shaft a little bit, making it just a little bit more secure. So I don't know if you have to go to all this trouble, but I like to because I like to. So here you can see that the marks that it made. So I'm just going to drill those out a little bit, and we'll be ready. All right, I've got everything checked out. It's all nice and tight. We're all ready to rock and roll. Now I'll just go ahead and put this plate back in, and then we can take care of what's going on in the cab. So now I'm going to go ahead and finish off what we've got going on in the cab. Now, a couple of different things on your steering column here where it attaches to the bottom. Depending on your application, you might have to do some modifications down here in order to have the steering column held in nice and secure like. Wasn't that big of a deal. I took care of mine down there. They do have some options though. Now, if you were doing more of a 47 to 53, 55, 59, this would simply bolt onto the shaft, and then you would simply bolt it up underneath. Not something I would use on this, but like I said, 47, 53, 55, 59, that's a really good way to go. I think they've got a couple of different versions of this kind of steering column holder, so we might check that out. Now, electrical. Can you see this connection down here? They use this connection because it's the most common. Like if you buy the aftermarket electric Pro 20 kit that we have, it's going to plug right into that. It's already terminaled off. But you may not have that, so we have solutions for that. This is just one of the solutions. This would go ahead and attach right onto there, and then this pigtail would attach right to the pigtail that originally was in the other steering column. Now, I'm not going to use this right here. What I'm going to be doing is I'll get another one of these plastic pigtails right here. I'm going to take the wires that I originally had set up, and then I'll simply install it into this pigtail, and then I'll connect that up later. I'm not going to bore you with it now. I want you to notice this gray wire here. Now, gray wires generally are going to be your lights, and this is going to be powered for the little light right here on your selector. and it has a funny little connector on it. This little connector will fit into original style fuse panels. I've replaced this one already, so I'll take this off, and whenever I do any fuse panels electrical on trucks, I always give myself extra gray wires, because this is pretty typical that you'll be adding lights on later. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll put a different terminal on that, and I'll go ahead and connect that, and then I'll have lights on my gear selector when I go for that. So this is basically all about set up right here. So next I'm going to go ahead and install my steering wheel. Let me show you that. Actually, before I put on my steering wheel, I'm going to put my gear selector arm on, because it's just going to be easier with the steering wheel off. Now, the little spring right here, it's going to go into a specific little hole in there. In order to keep it in there when you're messing around with everything, you get some good heavy grease. And it's not so much that you need the grease for there, but what happens is that the grease kind of helps it hold it in there so it doesn't pop back out on you. So this is going to go in there, and then you got to find the little hole that it slots into. Maybe get a little screwdriver or something that'll help you get it into the right spot. So now I know that's in the hole that it's supposed to go into. And now what I'm going to need to do is take my arm and put it in there, something like this. Then I'll need to take this pin and watch my holes, line it up, and stick this on in. Got everything all set up. Now on your shift linkage, what you want to do, more than likely you're going to have to modify it from what you originally had. But a couple of helpful handy hints is that the selector arm that's on the transmission, you can't have it up too high or it's too hard to shift. You can't have it too low or it won't be able to shift through all of the gears. So you want to have that at about 8 o'clock. Then you put your rod on, you come up to the steering wheel, you measure it exactly where you need to cut it off, and then you go ahead and bolt it on. You go ahead and double check everything, and you might need to do some adjustments so that it sits in the park reverse drive, but it's this one popped right in and easy to go. Another thing I did not do though is I didn't make sure that my wheels were straight before I put my steering wheel on, and actually it's a bit off. I'll just fix that later. You can see here that I've got a lot of range. So if I'm short, I can go all the way down, all the way up. And this has got a really, really nice walnut steering wheel on here. This is real walnut wood. And this just gets better looking with time because the oils from your hands get on there and darken it up. And it's just a really good sporty way to upgrade your truck, along with your column, your shift linkage. So again, this is a 60 to 66 truck, so this is pretty easy on this. Your 47s to 53, 55 to 59s are going to be a little more difficult, but it's the same basic gist. So make sure you go through and you figure out all your peripherals, whether you're going to get a steering wheel or not, whether you need the automatic transmission shift custom linkage that we have. And there's also the braces that'll hold it at the front right here. There's braces that'll hold it at the bottom. So make sure you really plan things out, because you got a lot of different options. And then after you're sure which way you're going to go ahead and pull the trigger and get everything all set up. Now, I know you can do this job. I'm rooting for you. My name's David Welch. I'm here every single Tuesday rooting for you. I'll be back next Tuesday rooting for you. So make sure you subscribe and check us out on Facebook and Instagram, because we're on that stuff too, because you're supposed to be these days. So we'll see you out on the road, man.